Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If I could have your attention, please. Tonight we are my name is Jennifer Bailey. I'm the Executive Director of Communications and Community Engagement. And tonight we are very pleased to host our student showcase. And we have the Lake Belton Middle School Orchestra. So y'all may begin.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed our student showcase tonight by the Lake Belton Middle School Orchestra. Can we have another round of applause for them? The time is 6:19. And the Belton Independent School District Board of Trustees are now convened in a regular board meeting Monday, March 27, 2023, in the Pittenger Fine Arts Center located at 400 North Wall Street, Belton, Texas. A quorum of board members is present. This meeting has been duly called. Notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. I want to welcome all the members of our audience, live stream viewers, to this meeting. As the Belton ISD Board of Trustees, we are here to set goals, listen to reports from the superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a meeting of the Board of Trustees that is held in public. It is not a public meeting. Prior to this meeting, board members have received information related to the items on tonight's agenda. Agenda items may not necessarily be handled in the order listed in the notice. This meeting is open to all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. These proceedings are being live streamed on BISD's YouTube channel, and a recording of the meeting will be available on the district's website in the days following tonight's meeting. For the video quality to adequately reflect proceedings, I respectfully ask that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking and that cell phones are turned off or in a silent mode. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening and for your interest in the Belton ISD. Please rise for a moment of silent prayer or meditation. Please remain standing as our communication team introduces students from Southwest Elementary here to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and honors to the Texas flag.
We have two students with us tonight from Southwest Elementary. Leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance is Braylon Lyons, and in the Texas Pledge is Jada Brown.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
All right, thank you. Let me tell you just a little bit about these two students. As we said, they're both from Southwest Elementary. Braylon is a fourth grade student. He enjoys math and studies world geography. He's played soccer for the last 5 years, and his favorite food is pozole that his grandmother makes for him. And Jada enjoys reading and playing on the computer at home. She also plays soccer, and her favorite food is also mine, egg rolls with dumplings. Y'all can have a seat. Thank you.
All right, the first item on the agenda is recognitions. Ask everybody to remain in the auditorium at the conclusion. All right, board.
Good evening, board. And Dr. Smith, it is my pleasure to come to you tonight. You can see we have a packed room because we have a lot of recognitions to go through this evening. And students, please stay through our recognitions and support your peers if you don't mind. Our first recognition this morning, well, let's give it up one more time for the Lake Belton Middle School Orchestra. These guys did a fantastic job. Our first recognition, we are going to recognize top academic talent. We have Caleb Bovell from Belton High School and Kevin Thomas from Belton New Tech. They are among 15,000 students nationwide who are being honored for the 2023 National Merit Scholarship Award. This is huge. Congratulations. And after graduating in May, Caleb plans to attend college and study mechanical engineering, and Kevin wants to enter the medical profession. So our next recognition is the UIL State finalists. We have Sydney Alameen, a senior at Belton High School. Get this, she placed 15th twice at the UIL 5A State Championship. She placed in the 200 and the 500 free races. Congratulations. And as you all, I'm sure, are very well aware, Belton ISD has a fantastic fine arts program. And now we're going to honor our orchestra, state, solo, and ensemble state finalists. We have students from Belton High School and Lake Belton High School, and we're going to recognize them all at the same time. Congratulations, guys. All right, now we have a number of students who were made it to the state level band solo and ensemble. They're from Belton High School. Congratulations to these students. As a district, we're incredibly proud that we have the best of the best right here as far as fine arts goes. And now we have 60 students who have been named solo and ensemble state qualifiers. That is incredible. Our first picture is going to be the students from Belton High School. What's cool about tonight is we're representing the fine arts in a number of different disciplines. We've got band, orchestra, choir, visual performing arts. Congratulations, guys. And next up, we have the Lake Belton High School Choir Solo and Ensemble state finalists, or state qualifiers, rather. How great is it that we have such a large group representing us at state? Congratulations, guys. We also have tonight a number of Belton ISD students that are state qualifiers at the Texas Art Education Association's High School Visual Arts Scholastic event next month. Only 10% of artwork given superior ratings at the regional event are also awarded area medals and then advanced to state. So once again, we have top talent here in Belton ISD. All right, our next recognition is we have the Temple Rotary Educator of the Month. Julie Ann Kamenecki is being recognized for her outstanding service to Belton ISD. She's a third grade teacher at Miller Heights Elementary. This is her 8th year in education and her first in Belton ISD. Courtney Brewer, her AP, says Julianne is a phenomenal asset to her team and her fellow colleagues. She always exhibits a deliberate, positive mindset for her students and the entire campus. We are so proud to have her at Miller Heights, and we look forward to seeing her continuous impact on Belton ISD. Congratulations. And tonight for our department showcase, we have our business services team led by Miss Melissa Lafferty. There's 24 members of this team, and they do everything from process 10,000 checks per year and processing 26,000 invoices. They process 54 payrolls, nearly 7,000 purchase orders a year. The warehouse crew fulfills 40 work orders a month. They are a hard-working team. This year, they earned the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association, and the Association of School Business Officers International presented them with a Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. Congratulations to our phenomenally talented business office. Great job. That concludes our recognitions for the evening.
Well, that was a lot of celebrations and a lot of wonderful things happening at Belton ISD. Now, something magical happens at every meeting. If you would like to stay for the duration of the meeting, we would love for you to stay. But if you're a kid sitting here wanting to get out of here, there you go. You're free to go. If you're a parent that's with one of these kids, you're free to go as well. I told y'all that would be magic. It happens every time. So, next on the agenda is public comments. Based on policy BED local, we take public comments regarding items on the agenda at the beginning of the meeting. Comments regarding non-agenda items will be heard at the end of the meeting to allow the board to conduct the business of the district. Forms have been provided in accordance with District Policy BED Local. Any person wishing to address the Board of Trustees during public comment shall sign up before the meeting in order to comply with the Texas Open Meeting Act. The board may not respond to comments or otherwise discuss or act upon any issues that are not posted on the meeting agenda. Participants will be allowed 3 minutes for public comments regarding items on the agenda. We have a timer on the screen that will show your allotted time. A sound will occur at the conclusion. The board shall not tolerate disruption of the meeting by members of the public. When I call your name, please come to the podium, state your name and city of residence for the record. The first person is Hillary Hicklin, and Scott Farnier, you are on deck.
Good evening, Hillary Hicklin from Belton, Texas. I did not write down my comments, so hopefully I don't regret that. I want to speak in regards to the consent item for the policy to delete or eliminate hunter education class. I would hope that you would not do that because I consider hunter education as a life skill, and just because we don't currently offer that class doesn't mean that in the future it might be something that we want to offer. I'm myself not a hunter, but I did go through hunter education whenever I was in public school in Texas, and there were some valuable lessons that I learned, even though I've never hunted in one day of my life. But I learned a lot about gun safety, just being sure of your target and what's behind it, just a lot of really helpful life skills. And thinking about just how hunting is a popular activity here in this area, that it might be something that we want to offer in the future. I'm not sure what the harm is on keeping the policy on the books in the meantime. If there was a group of students that wanted to access that kind of a class, it's available, versus if we don't have the policy and then we have to develop the policy later, could take some time, and that group of students might not even be able to enjoy it. So I am here to advocate that that policy remain for Belton ISD. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Farnier and Amanda Kelly, you're on deck.
Good evening. My name is Scott Fournier, and I reside in Morgan's Point Resort, Texas. I came tonight to address the board, specifically item 6B on the agenda, the attendance boundary for elementaries. While I'm personally pleased with the recommendation made by the district to the board, I think that there is a potential tweak that could be made, and the concern I have with the recommendation made by the school district to the board is that there's capacity pressure on Lakewood Elementary 5 years, 6 years out. And actually, under all three scenarios that were proposed by the school district in working in conjunction with the demographer, there were attendance concerns, or excuse me, capacity concerns with regard to Lakewood Elementary. And actually, the fourth scenario or alternative scenario that I would propose involves shifting a certain area that is in between, geographically in between High Point and Lakewood. It's a new development, Keela development, that the streets were just poured. There's no houses. There's no families there yet. My concern, so we take that area, which based on my conversation with the demographer, is a high density area that's expected to produce 150 students that would go to Lakewood Elementary. So we take that area, and right now, which under the proposed scenario that the district has proposed to the board, and we shift that over to High Point. That would alleviate the capacity concerns with regard to Lakewood in the 5-year period. And furthermore, I think that's the only capacity concern really primarily under the proposed scenario. So one, you're not disrupting current families that live there because there's no houses, there's no families who have made investments where they live. Two, High Point has no capacity pressure concerns under this current scenario, actually under any of the three scenarios, but under the scenario proposed by the district to the board tonight. But three, it's geographically close in proximity to High Point. Probably the most northwest point of that neighborhood is closer to High Point than it is to Lakewood Elementary. So yes, that's it's not. I guess it's on your agenda tonight. It's a slight tweak to the proposed boundary attendance zone for Lakewood and High Point that we would request. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, if it's okay for me to just share, just so our public knows, we have no screen access up here and stuff, so the timer and everything, we're relying on our tech team and everybody back there. We apologize.
Ms. Kelly.
Hello. I am speaking on agenda item number 4. I'm from Temple, Texas. My name is Amanda Kelly, an athletic trainer who resigned from Belton Independent School District last year after he was caught watching child pornography while on campus in view of students, has again delayed his trial. He's one of multiple Belton ISD educators charged with sexual misconduct in recent years, including a middle school orchestra teacher who's now in prison for distributing child porn. Trevor Swift is accused of viewing porn during school last May. He was actually escorted off campus in the middle of April. U.S. Marshals arrested Swift on May 26th and charged him with possession of visual depictions of sexual activity by minors, a federal felony. A June 14th federal grand jury indictment added the charge, saying pornographic image viewed by Swift included prepubescent minors and minors who had not attained the age of 12. He faces
Ms.
up to
Kelly?
20 years in prison.
I'm going to allow you to finish, but
You pause
this
the
is not
time.
on the agenda,
you
so
pause
in the
the
future,
time?
if you could please follow the rules of
It
the
is on
meeting.
the
Thank
agenda
you.
because number 4 is about values and belief. This directly impact my kids' ability to go to this school. So it absolutely is an agenda item, just so you're very clear on why I'm reading this. My kids are not safe at Lake Belton. Since his arrest, Swift has delayed his trial 7 times. On Friday, Judge Albright granted Swift's latest request for continuance. His next scheduled court date are in May and early June. Belton parents only learned about the child porn allegations against Swift through public information requests. This is yet another example of how Belton ISD administration lacks transparency and accountability to parents and taxpayers here. Belton mom Amanda Kelly told Scorecard. She and other parents are upset that the district allowed Swift to quietly resign and never notified them about his on-campus porn watching or subsequent arrest. Kelly said that Belton ISD Superintendent Matt Smith refused to even provide the most basic answers about such a serious issue. I had every right to ask these questions because it happened at a school that my child attended. I've pulled my kids, as y'all are well aware of, from Belton ISD. I wanted transparency so that all parents of students in Belton that Trevor Swift might have had contact with were made aware and given the opportunity to have such an important discussion with their children. If parents don't know, they cannot talk to their kids about people like this. They may have come in contact with this man, and they would never know because the school district never allowed them that opportunity. Parents also obtained a TEA report from September concluding that Swift engaged in misconduct. He's been added to the Do Not Hire registry. He does not hold an educator certificate. I'm a protective parent, and I'm disgusted that the district has been so determined to stop parents, including me, from getting information about this and many other serious issues within the district. Y'all are dismissive, and y'all don't care about the parents. I have had it. I'm not paying tax dollars, working hard to fund a district that doesn't care about me or my children. I can pull them out and homeschool them. Y'all still get my money, so you're still going to hear my public comment.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, number 4, vision, empower each and every learner. Dr. Smith.
Board, just like we do every month, is take a look at some of the vision, values, and beliefs that we have as a school district. We've gone through those values and beliefs. We've gone through our journey of a graduate competencies, and tonight we're back to the vision statement that you all adopted and that we focus on a regular basis. A vision is a direction, a focus for a school district to continue working, to continue striving for on a regular basis, and to point us all in the same direction. The importance of us talking about these things at the beginning of every meeting is to ensure that our efforts continually lead us toward that vision. So the statement that says, empower each and every learner to pursue their dreams and enrich their communities. Every student that walks through our doors in Belton ISD, we want them to feel empowered to be able to explore the future, to be able to thrive in the educational system that they're in, and to be able to, when they leave our doors, to be able to be well prepared for life beyond our walls. Enriching the community is an important piece too that this board very heavily weighed in on when we adopted this vision statement. So tonight, if you would, talk a little bit about what the vision statement means to you and how you may have seen it play out in Belton ISD.
I'll be brief. Something that came to my mind thinking about this is it's a focus, and I think it's also a why. I think it's important to reflect on that. I know as a teacher, not just in the challenging times, but even in the most rewarding times, it's important as teachers to reflect on our why. And not just for teachers, I think it's important for kids and families. So I think, I don't want to speak necessarily on what it's about. I think Dr. Smith talked well about it. I think it's important that us as a board, we encourage each other and then encourage our community to talk about what they're seeing in the schools and encourage our staff to reflect on this, on a daily basis. Encourage even our learners to think about this for themselves. Is this being, are they being empowered? Are they being enriched? So I think it's important to just encourage, and then we need to talk about it, because I think sometimes we hear more about what's the challenging pieces of what's going on in our schools, and it's important to reflect on what's positive in our schools. So,
Ms. McDonald, Ms. Lee.
So we were just talking in a meeting just a little bit earlier about how we've got students that are graduating job ready right from high school, and the construction trades, and our drone program is allowing kids to be able to be certified to walk into high-tech jobs right out of high school. And that, to me, not only is our district casting a vision for these kids to be able to have these opportunities, but the kids themselves are embracing it and seeking out new opportunities, and I think that's super cool.
Board, again, thank you for sharing your thoughts on this. We appreciate your continued focus on our vision. That idea of enriching a community means giving back to a community that they're involved in, whether that's the Belton ISD community, another community that they engage in after their schools, but their service to the community as well was something that stood out to our board when we adopted this. And I'm proud to say that I see on a regular basis acts of our athletic teams, of our fine arts programs, of our students that are encouraged to engage in civic-minded responsibilities and to be out and visible, giving back to their community. And so I think you see glimmers of this throughout our system, and we'll continue to pursue a day when we empower each and every student, each and every learner to pursue their dreams and enrich their communities even more fully. Thank you.
Okay, well, one of our other journey of a graduate is adaptability, and we're about to do that because as of right now, we do not have screens, correct? Which don't really think we can do the taper report until we get those up?
We have those screens out there, so I'm looking at our tech team. Do we have the ability to make some arrangements to our screens up here?
So
we, if you wanted, we could adjourn for a few minutes and then,
or I can move to things we don't need the screen on?
That'd be fine.
Okay. The board okay with that? We moved items that, okay, so.
Sure.
Okay, then we're going to adapt real quick. Well, there we go. We're going to adapt, and The item we're going to now, action item, is item number 6. Dr. Smith?
I'm excited to welcome Mr. Todd Schiller up here tonight. We have some wonderful administrative hires, and I'll make a couple comments on those further in a minute.
Good evening, Board. So tonight we are recommending 4 recommendations for you. The first one being Gabby Nino for Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning. Gabby has a Master's degree of Education from Texas State University, a Bachelor's of Science degree from Texas State University, is in her 21st year in education, and is currently residing here with us, as you know, as the Executive Director of School Leadership, and has been with us for the last 3 years. The second one is Sarah Wyndham for Executive Director of Special Programs. She has her Master's of Communication Disorders and Speech Language Pathology from Louisiana State University, has a Bachelor's degree in Communication Disorders from Louisiana State University, is in her 24th year in education, and has served in the SLP in the private sector, and is currently the Director of Special Programs. Then we have Meredith Bonnet, who is for Assistant Principal at Southwest Elementary School. Meredith has her Master's degree in Education from Lamar University of Beaumont, Bachelor's of Science degree in Education from Baylor University, is in her 22nd year in education, and is currently serving as the Intervention Specialist at Southwest Elementary. Then we have Christy Whitman for Assistant Principal at Belton High School. Christy has a Master's degree of Education in Curriculum Instruction from University of Texas at Arlington, a Bachelor's of Science degree in Biology from UMHB, and is in her 18th year in education, and comes to us from Georgetown ISD, where she has been an assistant principal for the last 4 years.
If you would join me in giving them all a round of applause. If it's okay, I'll let the board take action on this one, if you would, and then I'd ask Gabby and Sarah to come up and say a few words.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the recommendation in the addition of personnel as presented? Ms. McDonald? Mr. Taggart? All in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right.
Good evening, Board. Again, I realize I welcomed myself earlier to join you all in a conversation. I am absolutely thrilled to be here tonight and to accept this honor. It's been such a journey joining Belton ISD, and I feel great conviction to continue the work here. I've been stretched and grown so much and find such tremendous value in the relationships that have been built. There's a little mixed emotions thinking that my day-to-day might shift a bit. I have such a tremendous respect for our principals, but it's also those principals and seeing our students in our classroom that really reinforces my belief that this is the right work, and I'm crazy excited about what the future holds for our children. I was asked recently why did you do this? And it is that. It's my belief in what could be. It's my belief in what will be. It's my belief in our vision for students in our district and for our community. So again, I thank you so much for blessing me with this honor, and I just couldn't be more proud than to be a part of the Belton ISD community. So thank you.
Good evening, Board. Thank y'all for having me. It is such a privilege to be here. I first want to thank Ms. Ramirez for her leadership and for growing me into this role, and I am forever thankful for that. It is a privilege to serve our students, and I look forward to working with Ms. Nino and with the rest of our team. It's been such a great past 3 years, so looking forward to a great next many years. Thank y'all for having me.
So Board, before we go down there and take pictures, and we're going to ask our new assistant principals to join us down there for pictures as well, I just wanted to make a comment about both Gabby and Sarah. I want you to know wholeheartedly how excited I am as superintendent to welcome them into these new leadership roles. One of the things that I believe is that we have to give good people opportunities to do the right work for our school district, but we don't just give those opportunities away. I think both of these candidates will attest to you that they had to go through a very rigorous interview process. And in that interview process, we pressed very hard on how we can continue to improve our system, not only celebrate the things that we're proud of, but to continue to improve our system as well. And one of the things that stood out to me about both of these leaders that I'm excited about is it's not just about what they do, it's about how they conduct themselves and how they do business. And I think those two things matter equally as we talk about leadership in a school system. So I'm excited to welcome Gabby and Sarah into these leadership roles. And the assistant principals, thank you for investing in Belton ISD. We're glad you're here, and we can't wait to see your name come up more and more as a leader in this community. Let's go over there and do a few pictures, everybody. Tech team, this is a really good time. If you need to do anything up here, to go ahead and do it.
All right, we are still working on that. We're pretty sure that Mr. Taggart kicked a cord, so that's why we don't have power. So, other items that we could move on to, under action item C, consider discussing appropriate action regarding the selection, construction, delivery method for BISD agricultural facility. Authorize the superintendent to issue a request for competitive sealed proposal for the project, select a committee, evaluate, and rank proposals. Dr. Smith?
You all know the future Dr. Mike Morgan is coming up to the podium now, and he's going to lead us through the next couple items on this. Mike, take it away, please.
Good evening. My pleasure to be here this evening. We do have a couple of exciting projects coming up. And so I would like to start tonight with the, for our Delta program facility. I would ask you tonight to consider, as we're required as a district to choose the delivery method that we're going to use. Tonight, we're recommending that we use competitive sealed proposals for the Delta program. We see some significant advantages for the district. Because of the scope of the project, there's not a significant cost advantage for looking at a construction manager at risk like we've done on some of our larger projects. We believe using CSP should get us better participation from contractors and an overall lower price. So we would ask you tonight to approve the recommendation to use competitive seal proposal as the delivery method for the Delta program facility.
Any questions, board? If not, I'll take a motion to accept the recommendation that's been made. Mr. Taggart, second by Mr. Floor. All in favor? All right, thank you. That passes unanimously. I believe he has another one for us.
I do, and the similar rationale here. We are also doing a substantial addition in our agriculture facility there on 2nd Street. It is going to be equipped to handle our swine and poultry populations and allow us to use our existing facility for sheep, goats, and cattle. And once again, we are in the working quickly through a design process, and we should have construction documents ready soon. So I would ask you, for the same reasons as beforehand mentioned, that we approve a competitive sealed proposal as a delivery method for our agriculture facility addition.
All right. Any questions from the board? If not, I will take a recommendation or take a motion to accept the recommendation as made. Oh, Mr. Taggart, he's on ball. A second. Oh, Miss Lee, there we go. All in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to continue skipping on around for things we don't need a screen for. The next item on the agenda, well, it's actually not the next, but it's the next one we're going to do, is the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull an item for discussion?
Not for discussion, President Norwood, but I'd like to pull 8A2, the February 6, 2023 special meeting, the minutes that address that, primarily because the minutes do reflect that Ms. Bass had made a motion, initial motion, but there's no indication that Ms. Lee had seconded that motion, so we need to correct that in the record and make sure that that's reflected accurately.
Okay, thank you very much.
Board, what we can do is we can pull that item from this, and so you can approve the consent agenda minus item 8A2, and we will bring that back to you with the amended item that you have for next month.
Okay. So that's just going to be a clarification for the record. Okay. All right. Besides 8A2, are there any other items that need to be pulled? No? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Mr. Taggart. Okay. Do I have a second? Mr. Alcozer. All right. Do we have all in favor? Okay. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Let's see. Now, I believe Dr. Smith has said he feels comfortable doing the taper report because the public will be able to see it.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and do the taper report. Holly Moore is going to come on up and lead us through the taper report, and Dr. Cassandra Spearman will be here as well. During the public hearings, you do have the ability to see those screens out there, and I do believe that they are able to see them on our YouTube channel and stuff. It's just our monitors up here. So they will walk you through this presentation, and there will be an appropriate slide that we cannot see. So at that slide, it'll say public hearing, and that's when you'll open it up for a public hearing at that time. So Holly will give us a little bit of a heads up on that one. So Holly, take it away for us, please.
Thank you.
Good evening, honored board. So the purpose of this presentation is to hold a public hearing per TEA requirements on our Texas Academic Performance Report of the 21-22 school year, also referred as TAPER. The report is based on the 21-22 school year, and we began sharing information from the report at the June 21 board meeting. The entire report, including the district and campus reports, is a little over 450 pages. The intent of tonight is not to go through the entire report, but to make sure you know what was in the report and how to access it. The report includes a district report and a report for each campus. The overall taper is an annual summary of the 21-22 school year. You may wonder, why do we look at it now? TEA has to wait until all appeals and final information are completed. This is the final summary report from the 21-22 school year. The PEIMS data is a lag and includes data from the 2021 school year. Also included is the accreditation status. The commissioner did not issue accreditation status across the state due to COVID impact. Campus performance objectives are included in campus improvement plans. TAPER includes a report on violent or criminal incidences. In addition, TAPER includes student performance report on how students perform at institutions of higher post-graduation, which is also lag data. Lastly, we are required to give an update on our House Bill 3 goals from the 21-22 school year. Just a little background on these goals and aspects of our accountability reporting. Early childhood literacy and math and college career military readiness, also known as CCMR, goals were created based on the House Bill 3 bill passed in 2019 by legislation. The requirements are based on the 60-30 Texas goals, which are to have 60% of students reaching proficiency, Texas goals, which are to have 60% of students reaching proficiency by 2030. The thinking of linking early childhood goals with CCMR together and the early academic achievement will lead to better post-secondary performance. This is our data for early childhood literacy and math. This data was shared in August and December, but we're required to highlight the data in our public hearing. Specific campus data can be obtained within our TAPER. The next couple of slides focus on CCMR. I want to begin by providing you with a reminder of the indicators for CCMR. There are 10 different indicators and several ways to meet those. There are specific scores students must meet to earn a CCMR indicator. It's important to note that since House Bill 3 was passed, the criteria has changed each year, not always significantly, but we are expecting more changes this coming year that we highlighted at the February meeting. This performance is based on lag year data. So this data is based on the 21 graduates. Unlike STAR data based on one single assessment, a student hitting any one of the 10 indicators under CCMR will meet. We have students who meet several of those indicators. In this data, New Tech is a part of Belton High School. Lake Belton High School does not have college career military readiness until 2024, and New Tech will not have it until 2026. Board, at this time, do we have any public comments?
I do. Ms. Hickland? You've already stated your name and address, so you're good.
I will admit that I do not have experience or competency reading these reports, and so just in the time that I was able to look at the graph, I specifically wanted to speak to the student disciplinary action incident counts, violent or criminal incidents. I noted, first of all, safety is paramount to all of parents. We want to know that schools are safe for our students. I noticed on this graph that there were only 2 schools listed. And then I also noticed that there were some notable events that were left off of the graph. I noticed at the top of the graph where it says, it's very small, that the data are masked if the number of students involved is less than 5. So I understand that not everything might not be indicated on this graph. However, I also noticed that there are a couple areas where only 1 incident is noticed, and so I didn't know if maybe that incident had more than 5 students. So I get that there's, that there's some play here, I guess, if that's the right word. But I believe that this creates a skewed data at the bottom for the results of what we're looking at. And I didn't understand why there were only 2 schools listed. I guess it's possible that those were the only incidents in all of Belton ISD, and that would be fantastic. But I pulled, which is in the packet that I gave you, I pulled the police reports responding to the address of the schools, and I just included the first page of the report, one for Lake Belton High School and then one for Tarver. So again, I don't know what's recorded and indicated on this graph. So basically, it's just a question, and it feels like there might be a disconnect in the data that is presented on this graph in an area that's really important for us as parents to understand what incidents happen on campus. So it's more of a question than a comment. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, and I believe we have someone to answer that question.
Dr. Smearman and Ms. Moore, if you would, you can come up and just kind of give a little bit of an overview on why some of those things happen. And again, the example that we were given was police reports for a couple of schools, and incident calls don't quite match reporting on here. So I'll add to that. But if you'd address some of the things like Ms. Hicklin was talking about, I'd appreciate it.
So when we pull the data that goes into this specific report, it's very specific PEIMS data. And so when we work with our PEIMS director, he pulls that and he sees what qualifies for this data chart. And so the other schools did not qualify in this chart. It doesn't mean certain instances haven't happened. It just means that the ones that qualified happen in this chart because it's a much more narrow scope of what needs to be reported on the TAPER report. And then Dr. Spearman's going to also answer and address the further clarification.
Okay. Good evening. How are you? So we are aware that we did have a major incident at one of our high schools in the last year, and the incident was reported. It was reported as a State Code 17, which is what we use for the Code of Murder. Okay? We know that that happened in our community. When we entered that code, the student was incarcerated, which made it difficult for us, well, not difficult, impossible for us to take action on that code. And so we coded it an action. So there's an offense code, which is a 17 of murder, and then there's an action code, which is 28, mandatory action not taken, and the reasoning is student is incarcerated. However, we received a fatal error. So in trying to correct that error, we added what had taken place, which is a parent conference with the parent to share what had occurred on the campus and that there would be the ramifications of law enforcement. Again, it resulted in a fatal error. In trying to clean up the PEIMS data and to clear the error, we were guided that because the student had met eligibility for graduation and we could not impose any discipline, that we could not include that incident in our data.
So
a graduated student cannot have discipline, and that's kind of what the guidance was that we received.
Dr. Spearman, did you work with TEA in reporting that?
That is correct. So our PEIMS director and our director of student services both had ongoing conversations with the discipline department at TEA over the course of 3 days, and that was the final guidance that we received.
So, board, and again, I want to very clearly acknowledge, we all know we had a significant incident at Belton High School last year, and it doesn't show up in the TAPER report on this, and it's because of the student's graduation status at the time of reporting for all of this, in that fatal error that kept getting kicked back in the PEIMS data submission. That's how we were told to code this. This is in no way, shape, or form us saying that an event didn't happen.
Board, any other questions? No? Okay.
Okay. You can access the taper on the Belton ISD website and the TEA website. The last piece is the taper glossary. We encourage individuals looking at the taper report to be sure to also use the glossary. Some of the terms and definitions are not intuitive as to what specific grade levels or school year is being included. The glossary will explain what data is being used. At this time, does the board have any other questions or comments?
Ms. Bass?
So I know you're talking about if parents or any individual that's looking at it, they can look at the glossary, but what if they have further questions? Is there contact information that they could reach out to the district and speak to an actual person and not something just from the website?
Yes, they are more than welcome to call me or email me, and I'd be happy to talk to any of our parents to further explain, because there is a lot in there, and it can be very confusing.
Okay. Thank you.
It's worth noting that Holly's email address is on the last slide that we were struggling to see too,
Yes.
so it is on the last slide for this.
Okay. There are no other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It is a hard report to read, and appreciate the clarification. So now that we've just destroyed this agenda, next on our list is going to be under action items B, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding elementary attendance boundaries. Dr. Smith. Oh, I need to close that meeting.
Yes, you do.
Oh, I do.
Close that public hearing.
Okay. There being no other comments on that, the public hearing involving the tape report is now considered closed.
Board, as we are navigating a new device in front of you for the first time, you just hit the down arrow and that will move you through into the next presentation. And I do think it's important for our board to be able to see this next presentation. This is on the attendance boundaries for our elementary schools, and future Dr. Mike Morgan is going to lead us through that.
Thank you, Mr. President and Board. My pleasure to be here tonight, back again. I hate to say this will be a little lengthier presentation than my previous items, but we will get through this. So I'm here tonight to ask you to consider, discuss, and take action recording new attendance boundaries to take effect for the 24-25 school year. Our purpose here tonight with this presentation is to provide you with the district's recommendation for the adoption of these new elementary attendance boundaries. Throughout this process, our goal has been simple. We wanted to take the investment that's been given to us by our community, make sure that we manage growth to the best of our ability, maximize the use of our current and future facilities, and reduce our use of long-term portables. As you know, Belton's a vibrant community. It's fast growth, and people have chosen to make BISD their home. Since 2019, our capacity has grown by about 1,500 students. That 2019 is significant because that's when we opened our last elementary school of Charter Oak Elementary, and it's also the last time we adjusted elementary attendance boundaries. The chart you see was taken from the fall 2022 demographers report and shows our growth since 2019 and our expected growth over the next 5 years. We will receive an updated demographers report next month. In May of 2022, our voters approved 2 bond propositions to accommodate the enrollment growth and undertake other district projects. Included in these propositions were funds to expand Southwest Elementary, the construction of James L. Burrell Elementary, and the construction of Hubbard Branch Elementary. Of the total bond project, these 3 projects intended to increase elementary capacity total nearly $95 million. Increased elementary capacity is something that's definitely going to be achieved. Of the 1,700 new seats, which is 800 at Hubbard Branch, 800 at Burrell, and 100 at Southwest Elementary, minus the closure of the 306 students currently at Miller Heights, we will be adding 1,394 more student seats when these new attendance boundaries take effect. In addition, our third goal was to try to reduce the district's use of long-term portables. And as you can see from this slide, that we do feel like our bond project and our bond programs have done what we set out to do. The bond projects will reduce our overall dependence on portables from 25 to 4 and eliminate the use of long-term portables at most of our campuses. That's an 84% reduction. As a fast-growth district, it must be noted that we may have to use portables again in the future, but we prefer to do it as a short-term strategy to address growth and not as a long-term solution to provide teaching on campuses. We do feel like that we've lived out our aspirations of Goal 1 of stakeholder and community input, and Goal 5 to maximize the use of our facilities and our resources. In this process, we've also tried to live around our value and belief of learning space, and that we believe in well-designed and maintained facilities will positively impact student learning. This has been a 7.5-month journey. So we started in mid-August of 22 with gathering data, working with our demographer. At the end of August, we had our first meeting with our long-range facility planning team. And from that time until tonight, we had concurrent processes going. So from August until December, we worked through asked you in December to adopt parameters that would guide us through the final 3 months of this attendance boundary process, while at the same time started working on what potential maps and scenarios could look like that we could take forward to our community. So the development began with our long-range facilities planning team. It went through DWIC. It went through our facilities committee. We had a parent thought exchange in November of 2022, and all that feedback helped us identify the parameters that we would use, and then develop maps that would ultimately go out as the scenarios that we would test with our community and see what kind of feedback we could get. Our long-range facilities planning team and others developed 6 maps over the course of the fall. Those maps were narrowed down to 3, and those were the ones that went out to our community earlier in March for feedback. All in all, we had three different times our long-range planning team worked around this. We had a thought exchange with over 900 participants. We had attendance boundary, an email message and presentation that went out that had over 15,900 views or opens. We had over 1,000 English and Spanish-speaking parents and community members watch the 12-minute presentation on the attendance boundary process. We had over 210 feedback forms through our submission, Google submission from our presentation, and we had listing session with approximately 30 attendees. We've answered many emails over the last couple of weeks and many phone calls as well. The parameters that were adopted in December, we hope to show that we tried to live out to these to the best of our ability in making a final recommendation. For growth, we made sure that we tried to leave capacity in the areas where we anticipate the fastest growth and the highest density of new residents. Socioeconomic factors, we think that we're presenting reasonable boundaries that will ultimately create more balance between schools and percentages of economically disadvantaged students. Neighborhood unity, we tried to work with our demographer and go zone by zone and neighborhood by neighborhood to try to make certain that we didn't split neighborhoods between 2 different elementary schools. Family impact was considered in the final recommendation, but we need to understand that of the new seats that were created, we are upping our capacity by almost 15% with these attendance boundaries. So when you have 15% new capacity, there are going to be some families and some neighborhoods that will change schools, and as we add 2 new campuses and growth at another. And then finally, feeder pattern alignment. We have a very comparable feeder pattern alignment, which gives us protection and balance to middle school enrollment forecast for the next several years. I would now like to take a few minutes to hit the highlights of the recommended attendance boundary plan before we open up for discussion. I'll start with our northern zones. In the north, and I'll just briefly kind of touch on if there were major change or not for each of our elementary schools. But the neighborhoods from our current Tarver attendance zone on the northern side would be the one that would make up the entirety of the Burrell attendance zone. The area east of Old Waco Road would be added to the Tarver attendance zone. The area south of Belton Lake would move from Lakewood to Sparta. High Point would remain unchanged, and Pirtle would receive relief from the additional students moved to Tarver. And areas north of the Leon River and east of IH-35 would move south from Charter Oak to Southwest Elementary with its added capacity. Looking at our southern schools, our current Miller Heights attendance zones in areas north of the Lampasas River would move. Our current our current Southwest Elementary zones in areas north of the Leon River and east of IH-35 would move to Southwest Elementary, along with the small area between Loop 11 and Wheatley Road, between Sparta Road and Highway 93. The current Miller Heights area along Loop 121 and south of IH-14 and Shanklin Road would make up the attendance zone for High Point Elementary. Leon Heights would remain unchanged, and the western edge of the current Sparta zone would be moved to Chisholm Trail. And I know that was a lot, and I know that I wanted to briefly just kind of touch on each attendance zone, so I would stop now to see if there's any questions or discussion before I move forward into forecasting. So for forecasting, we have the similar report that we have seen over the past 8 years from our time working with Zonda Education. As our number one parameter set out to do, we wanted to take those areas where we think we'll see the highest growth and highest density and make sure that room and space was saved at those campuses to address our parameters. You could see that we are several years into this forecast before we have campuses nearing capacity. We do allow for growth, and we also found some solutions for Charter Oak, Sparta, and Lakewood to grant some relief to those three campuses in the center of our district, which proves to be most challenging when you look through the different scenarios. Feeder pattern alignment is very similar to the current feeder pattern alignment we have. The movement of some neighborhoods has exchanged, for instance, Lakewood Elementary, which was a split feeder pattern between Lake Belton Middle School and Belton Middle School, now becomes a pure feeder pattern, while Southwest Elementary has 89% of students going to South Belton Middle School and 11% students going to Belton Middle School. All in all, we would have 4 split feeder patterns. Charter Oak would remain the only school that would split between the 2 high school feeder patterns as it has since it opened in 2019. I will say that our student services staff has worked with families. If you are a member of a very small cohort that is split from one campus to another, we do try to work with those families on a case-by-case basis and see if there are extenuating circumstances that would allow them to stay with their cohort group if it's a vast majority. You can see a fairly even split between Hubbard Branch and a Pirtle split that is very similar to what we've had for the past 2 alignment zones between Lake Belton Middle School and North Belton Middle School. Some of the next steps in this process, we know that communication, once we get to an approval point, communication is going to be very important. We know that with growth comes change, and change can be hard, and we need to do a good job telling that story. We need to do a good job making sure that families and staff have the information they need. I will remind everyone that by taking action so early, we're allowing our community, for the most part, around 15 months to prepare and brace for the changes that these attendance boundaries may have. The exception with that would be our students, our 400 or so students who will be the inaugural class at Burrell Elementary, and we will have to start getting some communication out to that community sooner because of an anticipation of being able to be in that building early and relieve some of the pressure of stress of overcrowding at Tarver Elementary. We will do a good job communicating with our community on the circumstances under which a student could remain at their current campus when boundaries go into effect, how transportation services will ramp up prior to implementation of new attendance boundaries and how that will be communicated and what families will be impacted. And then obviously the next steps for Burrell Elementary opening. We'll also have processes to garner community and student input for mascots at both new elementary schools and make sure that we have numerous opportunities for families to get on campuses, meet principals, meet teachers, and see their new homes if they are going to indeed change schools. I know this is a tough decision. I know it impacts families, but I know that a $95 million investment, 1,400 new seats is exciting for our district, and overall it's going to be great for the quality of our teaching and learning that we're going to be able to give our elementary students. It's going to be great for capacity, great for class sizes, and we look forward to moving forward with this with your support. Now I'd open it for discussion.
I just want to thank you, Mike, for the work you put into this. It's been very thorough, and I appreciate mostly the input that our community and our parents have been able to have if they wanted to. And it's very thorough. I know nothing will ever be perfect. We live in a very strangely shaped district that covers lots and lots of miles. But I think it's incredibly thoughtful, and I truly appreciate all the work you've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, this may be a little bit off the subject, but in terms of the transfers, the inter-district transfers, how's that going to impact? Is there something that we're going to have to address policy-wise, or how are we going to move forward with that in terms of the transfers?
Yeah, historically, the district, particularly with elementary students, the district has been open to easing the transition for those that are have the biggest concerns about making that. And so we would come with administrative recommendations, communications to our community on what that process may look like. Typically, you would take, what we've done in the past is take some of your students that have been on campus for the longest amount of time and allow those families an opportunity to stay as a transfer student for that first and second years, if we choose to go that route. So that's kind of the plan. Now, the good news is at the early end of the forecasting, we have ample capacity at the campuses as the growth catches up. So it will not, should not impact in a very substantial way towards the capacity and operations of that school if some students did ask to stay. So we would evaluate those through our student services department. Generally, we would expect them to follow and meet the same criteria that other transfer students would have, meaning that that's where the board policy FDB local, since these would be intra-district transfers, would come into play, and they would have to meet that 5 or 6 prong criteria that transfer students have to follow. So typically, good behavior, good attendance, provide their own transportation, some of those sorts of things.
Thank you for all the work on this. I mean, I was very happy to see, this is a assimilation of, I think, all 3 of the plans, right? I think when I personally looked at the 3 plans, like there were things about each of them that I didn't necessarily like, but this really looks like it kind of took the best of, what we came up with or what was proposed from the north and kind of, did it that way, and what was the best of sort of what the options were and the feedback in the south, and really made it look this way. So this is really I guess an assimilation of all those plans to try to take the best out of all of it. So this is tough. I had some great conversations around this at one of the listening sessions, and particularly around some transportation concerns, and it looks like those transportation concerns have been addressed here as well. I guess just to address one public comment, did we take a look? Do you know the neighborhood that Mr. Fournier was referring to? And did we take a look at that? And
we did. We looked at that. We looked at the neighborhood that's going to, the 584 homes that are going to go in across from Lake Belton High School, met with City of Temple planners and really tried to look through each aspect of it. It was kind of a trade-off. I mean, there was a couple of neighborhoods in the north and a couple of neighborhoods in the south. We could move them to a different school, but it would create a similar scenario in the other schools. So we do feel like that we are going to be pretty sound for 5 to 6 years, and then at that point, if we have to look at things, we can look at things again. But I do feel like that we've got a plan that's going to give us the capacity to not have to look to portables, not have to look to expanding class sizes in certain campuses, and not all the strains that go. So we did look at that. We looked at some futures, looked at some currents, looked at current kids that are in some of the developing neighborhoods, and tried to come up with the best plan to address the growth and to minimize the family impacts as much as we could.
Yes. And last comment, I really appreciate the way that you laid out the middle school piece of this, right? And I think the way that it preserves, for the most part, I think those middle school promotion groups. So that was key. So thank you so much.
So we ran some projections on the middle schools. If we were to just say taking any of these scenarios, or even our current current elementary, and if we just went to pure feeders, some of the imbalance that we felt like, and I think this is just interesting, that by by 2026, we would have 3 elementary schools well over. We had some imbalance too, where you would have, 960 at one campus and 700 at the other, and some of those sorts of things. So it really was to minimize the feeders and the split feeders as much as we could, but also try to maintain that balance so our middle school kids can have the best experience they can, not be overcrowded. So.
I do appreciate that. I mean, as part of the last time we did attendance boundary adjustment, we did end up impacted, right? So I had a 6th grader who started at North and then moved to Lake. So I understand and very much appreciate what that means to have to move, a school. And I think, the way you did that from a middle school standpoint, very thoughtful. So thank you.
Just a couple of comments. I just want to echo the sentiment again, just thanking you and your team for doing this. I have trusted the process all along because we trust you all, and I think what Janet said, it was very thoughtful and very consistent in your focus all along, all the way through. I feel like every decision that has been made along the way can be accounted for, whether it was because of a parameter that we're focusing on, or whether it was input from the community or from the long-range the planning group. I feel like every decision made, you're accountable to that. There was reasoning behind that, and so I appreciate that. And I loved that we have the ability or the opportunity for families over the next several months and encourage them to go tour their new campus that they're going to potentially attend. I think that's such a great idea because changes can be scary sometimes, and so I think that's a great idea. I hope that lots of families take advantage of that and get them excited about the change, because change can also be really good too. So thank you.
And I'll say this, that with over 1,000 parents providing some sort of input to us, and probably I would say somewhere between 110 and 130 community members, parents on our committees and things provided input. I was happy to help facilitate this conversation, but it has been a wide conversation that's had lots of voices in it. And I would like to thank some of the last feedback we got, other than through our demographer, was one last meeting with our transportation department just to make sure that our final, we weren't going to create some inefficiencies and some things that wouldn't be good for kids and families in the long run. And so that team particularly, but all of the 100+ people that have weighed in on this have been working on it for the last 7 months, and then our parents and community members that weighed in as well. So.
Good.
Mike, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions just so we hit the highlights real quickly and so that we summarize well. What year do these attendance boundary changes take effect?
They will take effect for the 24-25 school year, although we do believe that we will have a building ready to go at Burrell next spring, and we would like to move some of those, the Burrell students that are currently at Tarver there, and do it well and do it right. And if we can't come up with a plan to do that, we don't need to do that, but we're going to. And be able to give Tarver some of the relief that was really one of the reasons we passed this bond to begin with.
And so there'll be targeted communication, I'm assuming, from Tarver Elementary and Burrell Elementary next year as that date approaches on that move.
Yes.
Great.
We will start the initial conversations very quickly, and then more information will be given throughout the spring.
Mike, the next part is on transfers and the transfer piece. We would work through this. It's not like parents that are in a certain area and want to request a transfer. It's not like they have to fill out a transfer form tonight because the attendance boundaries take effect the next year. Is that correct?
That's right. We've already closed the window for 2023-24 transfers, but we will open that back up again next February, and that would be the time that parents that want to transfer for the new attendance boundaries would do so.
And so if parents have concerns about that right now, after this is passed and stuff, they can start talking to your department, I assume, about those concerns and how to move forward?
We'll get some information on the website, and we'll make sure that's included in the community correspondence that goes out as well.
I just want to applaud Mike and his team. I believe, and if I'm mistaken, Mike, please correct me, 16,000 plus emails were sent out to community members with video in both English and Spanish, I believe. And from there, we received over 200 comments and suggestions on the various scenarios, and approximately, I think, 30 people showed up for the in-person meeting. Am I close on that one?
Close to it.
And then not only did they hear that feedback, but they took that feedback and used that feedback for this final presentation. The last thing that I'll note is in regards to the public comment made earlier, I agree. Lakewood Elementary's population is of concern for us after you get more than 5 years out. The one thing that I would want to make sure our community knows and understands, and that we constantly say, is that we will not guarantee 5 years plus of attendance boundaries, because we know in a fast-growth school district, new developments happen all the time. New developments have happened since our last demographer report. And in order for us to be able to respond, we can't make promises beyond a number of years. And so we will do our best to minimize impact on families and transitions. But we hold that concern that public commenter has. Absolutely, I'm concerned about that moving forward as well. And it may be that in 4 years, we're coming back to y'all talking about attendance boundaries as we see how the new populations shake out in that area. So we will keep you updated. We share that same concern that our public commenter had, and we will make sure that we do our best to address that moving forward.
All right, board, do we have any other questions right now? No? Sorry about that. Do we have a motion to approve the proposed attendance boundaries for the elementary school as presented? Ms. Bass? Ms. Lee? All in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next on our report, or next on our agenda, are reports. Start, Dr. Smith.
Our first report that we have tonight is Amy Armstrong is going to come on up and give us an overview of changes to the STAR assessment for the 22-23 school year. Amy is a director in our teaching and learning department, and she'll walk us through those changes that our students are experiencing across the state of Texas this year.
All right. Good evening, board. Thank you for having me.
Amy, real quick, I think
Yes.
board, you can still keep clicking down, and you still should be able to get to the STAR report here if you haven't gotten to it already. So thank you, Amy.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, so the purpose of the report tonight is to share significant changes that have been made to STAR and EOC testing. You may hear this referred to as STAR 2.0, which is really the redesign that is happening. So the reason for the changes is to more closely align with how students learn and how questions are asked of them in the classroom. It is important to note that it is a TEA expectation that all students test online. There will be new test question types that account for at least 25% of the test. They may include things such as text entry, graphing, multi-selection, drag and drop, and written response. We will also see an increase in reading passages that are connected to content standards, sorry about that, from other subject areas. However, they will still only be assessed on the reading standards for those passages. In the past, we have seen students take standalone writing tests in 4th and 7th grade. We will no longer have those assessments. Now we will see that writing expectations are embedded within reading assessments. Students will be asked to provide evidence from the text to support their answers. And then additionally, online testing allows for a variety of tools and accommodations that remain consistent and specific for students. Some tools are available to all, and others, such as content language supports, text-to-speech, and large print, can be assigned individually to students who qualify. So I wanted to show you a few examples of what this might look like for students this spring. This is a 5th grade example. You can see that there are a number and symbol buttons for students to enter responses into the boxes. At the top left of the page, you will notice navigation buttons for students to move from question to question. Students can move forward or backward, and the system will tell them if they're trying to move forward and they've forgotten to answer. In the upper right-hand corner, you will see icons for available tools and accommodations depending on what test it is for students. This is an example of 8th grade reading. You will notice This is an example of science content within the reading passage. If you, I know you probably can see it on your screen now. If you look at the question, you will notice that the science content is not assessed. It is the ELA expectation that is assessed. Again, you will see navigation buttons in the top left. Top right, you will see tools. Just under the top right where it's green, you'll see questions 12, 13, 14, 15. All 4 of those questions are aligned to that passage. Students can move back and forth between those questions, and the passage will remain on the left side for them to be able to see. Here's a biology EOC question, and so students can use scratch paper, but you can see that online tools and touch screen devices will be really important for questions such as this, where students will need to work out their answers. Again, tools and navigation buttons are there as well. And the last example is from U.S. History EOC, and this is a multi-part question. Some of the new question types, students can earn 2 points, but if they just get partially right, then they can also earn 1 point on those multi-part questions. So in response to these changes, we have taken several steps to prepare our students. Many of our students have already taken STAR or EOC assessments online, and all of our students have practiced with online platforms through learning tools and TEA practice tools. In preparing our teachers, we have had a variety of opportunities to learn about changes in the questions, online tools, and additionally, teachers have become more adept in using resources such as Performance Matters, Lead Forward, and interim assessments, which all support the new STAR question types. One of the most valuable tools of the online testing is the available accommodations. Our administrators and special education facilitators are ensuring that appropriate supports are assigned based on individual student need, and teachers are making these available to students throughout instruction. So with this being a significant change this year, Teaching and Learning has communicated this information to campuses through a variety of modalities. Additionally, the content coordinators have partnered closely with teachers and instructional coaches to support this. And then finally, we are very excited to announce Holly Moore and I will be having a parent session for STAR redesign. We're offering 2 different times and locations. Flyers and communication have gone out, and we already have several registered. Do you have questions about that?
Do you know if there's going to be some way, not only for students to practice how to use this ahead of the test and navigate the system, but also parents to be able to maybe sit down with their kids and show them how they'll be able to drag and drop and do all of that?
Yes, absolutely. So, and that is part of what we will discuss with parents during the meeting, but we can put out public information about where to go. TEA has all of the online practice platforms, and they're wide open for anybody to use and look at. So we will definitely get some information out for the community to be able to play around with that and see those questions.
Amy, have students already done that?
Yes.
So
yes,
please elaborate on that.
So students have taken the interim assessment. The interim assessment has been aligned to exactly how the STAR 2.0 will ask questions this spring. And then they have also used those online platforms through TEA to look at the different accommodations, use the different tools. There's a ruler if it's the right test and grade. Calculators are available. So it takes a little bit of work to get used to those tools. So we have had students playing with those tools. Additionally, a really important piece of that is students who have text-to-speech or some of those content standards. You can play around with the pacing of the voice, and you can do it really low, really high. And so it's important for those kids to play with that and kind of get that out of their system before they actually take the test. So yes, they've had plenty of opportunities to be in that system.
What about scratch paper? Is that a thing of the past?
No.
Okay.
They can use scratch paper. It does have to be turned in at the end of the test, but that is also another strategy our teachers have used in making sure that they use scratch paper. Because sometimes, if you're on the computer, it's very easy to click. And so teachers have been really working with students about the importance of using that scratch paper. So yes, they will have that available.
I have a question. Yes. You mentioned that this is an expectation of TEA. So is there an option to opt out of this online? So
yes, I kind of wondered on how I wanted to present that because if a student can't, there's only like really special circumstances, such as a student is homebound and there's no internet there. So that would be one exception where TEA would say, okay, they can take it on paper. However, whoever's proctoring that test does have to still enter their information online. So everything will still be graded online, but there's only just a couple specific situations where TEA will allow paper and pencil. Good question. That's a good question.
All right. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much for the update.
All right, you bet. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Facilities Committee report. Mr. Taggart.
Well, we did not have a meeting, but we were able to go and tour Burrell Elementary, and it was wonderful to see, still in relatively early stages, but to be able to kind of understand how they're moving through the project in stages and see the thoughtfulness that our Huckabee folks have put into it, and to be able to ask those questions, but to see it at this phase, we normally get on the campus much later in the process, but to be at this stage was, I think, an interesting time to look at it. But it was a great tour to see our community's support and our money in action. These things, once they get through all the red tape, it moves, and these guys are moving. So it was an awesome tour for us to be able to do that.
Thank you very much. Next item, this Policy Committee report.
We had a very short meeting. There were actually 3 policies that we discussed in our meeting. 2 of those we've tabled and bring back to us, I think, at our next meeting, right, Dr. Smith?
Yes, sir.
One of those dealt with administration of medication, and the other dealt with use of district facilities by someone outside the district. So we need to make some clarifications, and I think Mike Morgan's going to bring that back to us. The other one was the policy that was addressed during one of the comments that we heard today, which is a policy addressing hunter education. In other words, if we had a course that we taught hunting, then there was a policy addressing that. Since we don't have that course, then the decision was made to delete that policy. Now, there was a concern expressed about having some difficulty in bringing that policy back if a course was offered in the future. And just from my experience on this committee, I don't think that would be very difficult to do.
I don't believe we actually need that policy to offer hunter education in Belton ISD.
Okay. But if we did, if that were the case, then it's not difficult to do that, so, right. And I don't remember exactly what that policy said, other than just remember that it was being deleted because we don't have the course. But just to clarify, we don't need that policy. In other words, one is not dependent on the other, right? Okay. So that's an easy answer to that question. The last thing that we discussed was, I think Mr. Floor brought up a couple items that he wanted to discuss in the future, for future agenda. One was dealing with discipline. And then we had some discussion about the instructional materials policy, only because we had the meeting back in February. We had a level 3 meeting that we had to utilize that policy. And then after that meeting, we had some discussion about, hey, we need to maybe make some changes to this, make it better, because that was the first time it was actually implemented and taken into action in terms of going all the way up to a level 3. Of course, that may change now with House Bill, and I have a copy of it here, House Bill 900. One of the things I want to comment about is that because it's now in the legislature, we've got a bill that addresses books. I mean, the fact that they're actually looking at that now tells you how complicated this issue is. And they've put that on school boards to address that. But now the legislature's taken it upon itself to to address that in the bill. I don't know what, I think Dr. Smith is going to talk about it a little bit, and you've got a slide that you can show us. There's been a lot of activity with respect, a lot of response to this bill. The one that I have here in front of me, that may not be the one. Of course, if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. But if it does pass, based upon all the comments that have been directed at this bill, it's probably going to be quite different than what we have here in front of us. But at least it's going to address some of the concerns that we've had just with our own policy and probably make our lives a little bit easier, because now it's being forced upon us in terms of what the legislature is going to tell us what to do and what not to do as it relates to instructional materials. So it will facilitate things in that regard. So if anyone has a complaint about it, especially if this bill passes, then they're going to need to talk to their legislature about it and not necessarily bring that to us. We're doing the best we can with that. And Dr. Smith, when you do give your report, if you'll spend some time on that and elaborate on that issue, if you would. Chris, anything else that in terms of what you had brought up?
Just to clarify the student discipline piece of it. So I asked for an update on the implementation of the behavior framework, and while it's not necessarily a policy, it seemed appropriate in the time and the conversation that we were having to be able to really bring to us a presentation about how that behavior framework is really coming to life all the way down to the individual classroom. And so based on some anecdotal stories, that I've heard in the classrooms, I think what was sort of what the driving framework is maybe hasn't made it all the way down to the classroom, and there's some teachers that are feeling stuck in some things where, and it doesn't really compute with what I hear and what I know about the behavior framework, right? So there's a miscommunication somewhere in there, it sounds like. So like I said, I just asked for, a little bit greater visibility into what does that look like? How does that get implemented?
Janet, anything else on that? The other piece about this instructional material situation is that for us, if we start looking at that again and try and make it better, we would probably necessarily need to hold off on that, because we don't know what's going to happen with House Bill 900. Because if we do something and then it's a little bit different than what the legislature wants to do, then we're going to have to change it again. So we may have to just wait and see what the legislature does with House Bill 900. And then if we have some leeway in terms of a local policy, then we address it at that point.
Yeah, I think from a administrative perspective, we'd like to continue to take your feedback and move forward with some ideas, and then see how legislation shakes out in the end. And I'll go into some more detail on House Bill 900 in a little bit, but I do think that we've got some good feedback from our policy committee on some next steps, I think, and I think we can start making some ideas, putting pen to paper on those ideas, and then we can move forward. I view it as a two-pronged piece here. I believe that obviously if legislation passes that we support, then that's a positive for us. And then the second piece is we always look internally and say, what can we improve internally as well? And so that internal piece for me, I don't think is over yet. We have some ideas on how to make it better because we want to make it better. So we'll keep plugging away at it, and then we'll bring it to y'all moving forward.
And we did talk about some specifics and some concerns that we had, and we all expressed our opinions on what we thought about that. You wrote those down, and then we decided we were going to talk about it later. So yes, we did discuss that as well. And that's basically it.
Anybody have questions? No? No? All right, then I will hand it over to Dr. Smith for the superintendent's report.
I know you're excited, but you can also click forward on the superintendent's report as well. The important piece that I mentioned last month that I want to make sure that I stress, and know if you click fast, it doesn't mean my talking goes faster. That I'd really like to stress is where we're going, and I don't know that I've done a good job consistently in our superintendent reports with talking about where we're going. Just a quick reminder, our strategic plan is based on Belton ISD goals. You adopt goals annually as a board of trustees. Recently, you adopted 5 goals again for us to work with. They are broad, overarching goals. From there, we develop strategies to implement and key progress measures to measure our progress on. And so that was heavily influenced by a strategic plan that was created with community members over the course of a year. And that slide is in there just to remind us of that process. But ultimately, as you all read the vision statement earlier in our tagline that we move forward with, that idea of inspiring dreams and empowering futures is really important to us in Belton ISD. The pictures that you see on that slide show you our students in action. You see our athletes competing. You see pieces of artwork. Now that picture that has a dog in there looks like a picture, but it's actually artwork created by a student. You also see our students sharing their work, reading together in our classrooms. Ultimately, everything that we do on a regular basis, no matter what goal it's in, is in service to the experience that we want to see for kids. We want to inspire their dreams, meaning when they come in, we want them excited for learning. And we know sometimes that's a stretch for particularly middle schoolers and high schoolers, and so we got to get better in that area. But we want them to be inspired for their learning, and we want them to be able to feel empowered for the future that they're going to have after they leave our doors in Belton ISD. That often means things like being aware of the options that they have for the future, eligible to engage in those options, and prepared academically, socially, and skill-wise, like in the journey of a graduate, competencies in order to engage with those things. So that idea of aware, eligible, and prepared for a future in front of them is important to us in Belton ISD. Goal 1, engaging all stakeholders, also serves that. We believe wholeheartedly that by engaging partnerships in our school district, we have the ability to enrich the education of students in our school system. On that slide, you can see the strategies that our strategic plan committee, and again, that was over 100 community members that were involved in developing that. They had the ability to give us some ideas about how to move forward. So what that looks like for us in Belton ISD, if you take a look at the next slide under highlights, how we've taken steps forward in that. You know, our faith-based leaders have been an important group for us. We believe that engaging our faith-based community and supporting students and supporting our community makes sense for each and every student in our school system. We had a Principal for a Day experience in our district that garnered a lot of positive media attention, and it's about engaging our community and knowing and understanding the role of a campus-based administrator. And then we had the opportunity to eat with them, talk with them, and do a little debrief on that whole experience for us. We've had capital visits and communications with our legislators. That is another example of engagement with our community and service toward the vision that you're trying to create with our board within our school district. And finally, that Hubbard Branch groundbreaking ceremony. I felt like my speech at the beginning of that took about an hour and a half because I talked about all of the different partnerships that are important for us to have an experience like a new building come to life for the sake of our students. So this idea of creating partnerships within a community and the strategies that we're upholding to do that are really based on ensuring that the community comes in as partners to appropriately enrich the learning experience for each and every student. On the next slide, we talk a little bit about world-class team of employees, and I said last month I'd talk more about it this month. And so if you skip to the slide on highlights on this, I want to specifically highlight the Recharge Conference. Vicki Dean led the planning efforts for the Recharge Conference and did a great job. I need you to know that we had almost 2,000 employees in the school district under one roof learning with and from each other on a day together in Belton ISD. So some of the things that you see in front of you there, you see Keith Cook talking to a group of people who in some circumstances have never experienced a professional learning experience where they're learning together side by side with teachers and staff members throughout our system, whether it be our bus drivers, our custodial workers, or our maintenance department. You see our teachers gathering together, looking at data and analyzing next steps. And so there was some self-paced work that was going on there with a group of teachers. And then you see that some of our educators in our system learning from an expert in creating the playful classroom, because we actually believe that joy should be seen in every classroom in our school district. Why? Learning should be fun. It is fun when we do it right. So we want to make it fun for our students as well. Learning with your colleagues and from your colleagues, we know, is one of the best ways to improve a school system overall. So again, in an effort to create an environment where our students feel inspired and empowered, these strategies that we have and that we're seeing come to fruition in our system all contribute to the ability for us to see that stuff come to life. On the next slide, I have legislative update on there. There are a few things that we're monitoring on a regular basis. We're in pretty much constant communication with our local representatives and our senator, and I applaud our board for being advocates for Belton ISD and public education down at the Capitol on a few instances already this year, and we constantly work to communicate those things. As Manuel mentioned, House Bill 900 is one that we wrote a letter of support from Belton ISD's perspective on that one. And I think, again, I'm going to lean back on a two-pronged approach. We agree, and we've said wholeheartedly in our communication with our community, if there's inappropriate books on a library shelf, we don't want them there. And we said that back in last August when I sent communication out to the community. But we also want to remove those books and do those things the right way. So I applaud our board on working on a policy that helped address that. It's not perfect. We noted that in our letter to our legislators, and we're continuing to refine it, and we will continue to refine it. We will do our part as a school district to continue to make sure we're addressing this issue. On the flip side of that, the House Bill 900 helps us as a school system in other districts across the state put a little bit of a burden on publishers and book distribution companies that'll help us with this as well. So if the state decides to have specific language in there about content that they don't want any Texas public school to have, that legislation could help us with that. And so we wrote a letter of support with our representatives and with our senator that will be sent to our senator as well, so that they know just where we stand on that. Manuel mentioned this earlier. My belief is that legislation will changes through the process. I don't know that the bill will look exactly like it looks in draft form, and we will continue to monitor it, but I thought it was important for us as a school district to continue to support that. Other legislative updates that we continue to monitor and that I'm in constant communication with on are issues that directly address fast growth schools. We know that fast growth school districts have different and unique challenges in the state as opposed to other school districts. House Bill 2 in the budget piece is one of those things that we know could impact fast growth schools pretty significantly. We're working again today with our CFO and our financial advisor to ensure that we know and understand what proposed legislation would do and does to not only the school district but our local taxpayers as well, and we will continue to monitor those things. And also we're continuing to monitor things like curriculum bills that are out there, and also other bills that directly impact or directly align with the legislative priorities that the board has adopted back in October. And so as an admin team, we continually monitor those things, and we'll keep communicating as appropriate from our board perspective and the superintendent perspective based on the legislative priorities that you adopted. A couple other ones that we're watching is any accountability system updates and also any STAR testing updates as well. And there is legislation that is filed out there in both of those. I don't know if the board wants to ask any questions or make comments about any legislative updates, or I think, yeah, my last slide is discussion at the end. So any questions, comments, discussion that you may have?
I'll start down here. No? 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 Well, quiet group. You must have covered everything.
How about that?
All right. Okay, the next item on the agenda is board request for new information and/or reports. Board members right now, is there any additional? No? Next item, calendar of events. Have a busy few weeks coming up here pretty soon, so I look forward to seeing y'all at those events. And if you'll mark your calendars accordingly. Now, we will be going into closed session. The time is... No, we have no other public comments on non-agenda items. So the time is 8:07, and the board will go into closed session for consultation with attorney, Texas Government Code Section 551.071, personnel, Texas Government Code Section 551.074, student disciplinary matter, Texas Government Code Section 551.082, and deliberations about real property, Texas Government Code Section 551.072. We are now going into closed session. Thank you. Time is 9:14, and we are now back in open session. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 9:14.